Hello, welcome back to Emerge, the health podcast for busy, high performing women. I'm your host, Dr. Alex Swinson Ridley. I'm joining you today from the road. My 9-year-old son, our little cute little dog, and I are driving a car from San Diego all the way back to Fairbanks, Alaska, which is like 3,600 miles. For some reason, I thought this was a good idea. No, it's we're one day into our trip, so we drove from San Diego to Sacramento yesterday. And they both did really, really well. I did well too. They didn't sleep very long, so that's a bit frustrating, but it's all good. What I wanted to jump in and talk about is something that's been on my mind with this, and that quite a few of my clients have brought up, especially on our group calls. We've been having all these conversations about how do you stay committed to changes that you're making, whether it's with nutrition, with movement, with exercise, with all any and all the things when you're not in your normal place. So whether it's you're out with friends because we're actually being social again these days, or on a road trip, or traveling, or on vacation. And so I wanted to dive in, to how do we navigate these things? Because I think there's a couple of layers to this conversation, right? There's being really clear on what it is that we're committed to and what our goals are, and then getting really clear on what kind of experience we want to create in those situations, and deciding if they are going to align with our goals. And I think there's a big difference between, going out with friends 3 times a week versus you're on vacation for, a week or 10 days, or on a road trip for a week, in terms of the choices that you make and what commitment might look like. And so some of the common things that I here often are either, especially around food, like not knowing what to eat, not wanting to be a burden on other people, or on yourself, because it's you're being different. And a lot of the work that I do and with the women I work with, and I know a lot of women who listen to the show, we're not necessarily your like stereotypical eaters. Standard American diet, we'll call it that, the sad diet. We aren't, most of us are committed to feeding and treating our body in a good way. And so even like the simpler things that we do in the process that I work with women on is like adding significantly more vegetables. And so people think we're weird because we're eating vegetables, right? But it's not weird. And so there's all this stuff that we have to navigate as we're traveling. Because I was very present to this yesterday because we drove from San Diego. We actually got a late start because the door handle on the driver's side door of the car that I'm driving, we're driving a car back for, it's my middle stepson's graduation. He's graduating this year, so he's 18. So we got this car, and it's a decent car, but it's older, some issues. So the door handle on my door broke. And so it went into the shop. They actually couldn't fix it. So I'm doing this whole trip without being able to open my door except from one of the other doors. Very entertaining. So much fun. Anyways, I'm being somewhat sarcastic. So we got a late start, and I was like, let's just get to LA because we had to drive through LA. And I was like, I don't want to deal with traffic there. And we stopped and we saw the Hollywood sign and all that. And that was great. And then I was like, we have to keep going because it was, 2 o'clock, but then I didn't want to be around for LA traffic. And we still hit a little bit of it. But in doing all that, we didn't stop for lunch. And so, I am prepared with like snacks. So I have snap peas and carrots and trail mix that I like. And I had hummus and gluten-free pretzels and, stuff that I could eat. So I was snacking on a lot of that, but we needed an actual meal. And it ended up being like the only thing that I, in terms of fast food that I'm sometimes willing to do and I'll let my son have, but do for myself too, is In-N-Out Burger. And the reasons are like if you're not familiar with them, they're only on the West Coast, but they don't ever freeze their food. It's not organic by any means, but in terms of fast food, like it's the most fresh you're gonna find. So we ended up doing that yesterday. I had a burger. It was okay. It was whatever. And the rest of this trip, I'm choosing to have a much better plan so that I can at least nail breakfast and getting lots and lots of vegetables in, because I know that that's something that my body feels better with and that I value. And the other meals I'm gonna, as we take stop breaks, actually look for, places that have some more options. My typical go-to fast food is like Chipotle because I can at least get vegetables there, right? And their quality of their food is a little bit higher on the scale of where it comes from and all that. We were actually, this is a total side note, but we drove through a lot of California yesterday, and there's a lot of agriculture kind of in that middle section of the state along I-5 and a lot of cows. And we drove past feedlot after feedlot of just like there's no grass, they're in mud, they smell terrible, like all the stuff. And then I passed one pasture of grass fed, like they were just roaming around eating the grass and they didn't smell bad. And it was just like, oh, such a contrast. So if you've never experienced anything like that, I feel like probably a lot of us who don't live, well, who live in the places where agriculture is all the time, like we don't really think about it. I definitely notice it, and it's something that we should all be aware of. Like, also driving through a highway where there's like dust blowing and pollution and all this stuff, and all of the fruit, is on either side of the highway. And like that is the stuff they pick that you eat in the store. I mean, do they wash it? Maybe. Should you wash it? Yes, definitely. Anyways, I digress. So, getting back to this whole idea of how do we handle this? The first thing I always recommend is you got to be clear on what your goals are. Like, what are you committed to for yourself? And how do you what can you do to move yourself forward or feel like you're still moving towards that goal when you're traveling or whatnot? Maybe you're not as strict as you've been, or maybe you have a little bit of a change up. Like another thing I've gotten really committed to in the last 6 weeks is exercise. So we stopped 3 times yesterday, and every single time, one of the places it was 93 degrees and, like, awful, so I did not, do a whole lot there physically, but, we took 2 walks, we climbed up, and looked at the Hollywood sign, so that was, like, our initial thing 2 hours in, and then we took the dog. I was kind of fading, so I did end up going to Starbucks for a little something to pick me up. I do green tea, not coffee, but we parked farther away and walked to it with the dog so that the dog gets some exercise. So, finding little ways like that to build those things into your travel. So the other thing I'm really committed to is taking my supplements and also drinking plenty of water. And I can be a wee bit picky about the type of water I drink. So when I'm traveling, I do buy water. I've kind of gone through phases where I get asked often about water quality, and we do want to be aware of the water we're drinking. Your tap water is going to have a whole bunch of extra stuff in it, and I've honestly found, especially as we do a detox process with clients I work with, sometimes it's not about the food, it's actually about the water. So, I am committed to basically Fiji and Essentia are the only two bottled waters that I will actually buy and drink and think is worthwhile. And thankfully they have them in most gas stations and all that stuff now. So, I'm drinking the big ones, the big guys, and taking all of my supplements while we're traveling because I know that that'll help me stay a little more sane and healthy. So to kind of pull all this together, the first thing that's important is for you to decide what's important to you and what you're committed to. I have a client that lives in a rural place in Alaska. She's in McCarthy, and during the winter, everyone leaves and it's totally shut down, so they don't have restaurants or anything. And then in the summer, there's like two, so they really enjoy, especially when they have people visiting or whatnot. They enjoy being able to go out and like have that option, right? And so we've been having this conversation of she's also committed to losing weight, and she has this thing in her space about being a burden on other people. And so this is another thing I wanted to talk about because it's actually been coming up in a mastermind I'm part of as well, looking at like our relationship with money too. So this can be a thing everywhere because you want to really pay attention to like what are the things that you allow to stop you or that get in your way or that have you not be committed to what you say you really want to be committed to. Hopefully that makes sense. And looking at them, they're probably things that you value. Like obviously this client of mine, she values social time, right? And it's like they don't get it all winter long. And I totally get that. And so, we talked about like, can you create a compromise of sorts? I have another client who's in Anchorage, which is a much easier place, but she and this is something I did because I've been eating weird since I was not weird, but different from the rest of the world. I'll say that from the rest of the United States, very differently since I was 20. So, I've got almost 20 years of experience of this. And when I was in college and grad school, everyone wanted to go out and I didn't drink and, do all that stuff. And so I would just eat first and I'd still go hang out and have the social experience. It wasn't about, for me, it wasn't about the food or the drinks or whatever. It was about the time with people. And so, can you reframe some of that to match whatever your goals are and help you move forward in whatever your health goals are? Yeah, whatever that looks like. And being willing to, either have something take a little longer. Like if my husband was doing this drive, he'd be driving 16 hours a day. Obviously, he wouldn't have a 9-year-old and a dog with him either. But even if I didn't have them along, I wouldn't want to do that to myself. Like that just it's not fun. So I would rather, have it take a little longer, explore, find like places to hike along the way or go for a walk or check something out that's new, drive a little out of the way to find food that's good. I have found like healthy, organic, crazy food in the weirdest places, like middle of nowhere, Kentucky. You know, they exist. So you can either approach it as an adventure and not something that has to, be a burden on others, or if that's how you're going to feel about it, really just preparing yourself or choosing one, choose one meal that you're going to nail. Choose like one thing that you're going to stick to and continue the whole time you're traveling or on vacation, like whether it's supplements or getting enough water or just breathing, or maybe you're just going to choose to be present and, things, and that's fine. What matters and what's important is how you feel about it, how it's helping you serve, meet your goals or not meet your goals, and what values it's speaking to in your life, and how well. I had another thought and I'm tired, so I'm losing it. But you don't want to be beating yourself up, is what I'm trying to get to. If you're making choices that are making you feel terrible or, you know, make you mean, or like my throat's a little scratchy today because I did eat In-N-Out burger yesterday. So, it's stuff I don't normally have. I got all the veggies on it and all that stuff, but still stuff I don't normally have. And the rest of my meals were, snacks, honestly, because we were just on the road. But they were, I ate like an entire bag of baby carrots because it was something I had and all my snap peas. So now I need to get more today. But, be aware of how things make you feel. Like one of the biggest issues I think we all have with food is we just mindlessly eat. And I'm actually listening to a book that has to do with money right now, but it's funny that the parallels between wealth and health. Um, because with losing weight or any of that stuff, it's about just bringing some consciousness to it. Like if you are consciously aware of the food you're eating and how it makes you feel. Most of us are not. So it's checking in, it's asking yourself, how does this make me feel? How did I feel before? I don't need you to food journal or anything. Like, let's not be that crazy, but just having that awareness. I am aware enough to know when something, either makes me get a headache or maybe I'm less nice or I get more tired or any of those things. And so I can either make those choices or not in the future. And it all comes down to choice. So ultimately, and I don't want to keep rambling on this too long, but, if you have situations coming up, you're either traveling or you're visiting, you hanging out with friends, you're going camping, that's another one. It's possible to be completely well prepared. You just have to do some planning. So, I've talked about, failing to plan is planning to fail. So we want to have a plan and not be failing at the plan, but not have the plan be to fail miserably. I didn't have a great plan yesterday. That was why we ended up at that burger and I actually ate it. Normally I, would let my kid have it and probably not get it. And he doesn't get it all the time. So today we're gonna have a better plan. And really be clear on what are your values, what's the experience you want to create for yourself, and how does it align with whatever your goals are in terms of where you're taking your health. And if you can marry all those things, and boiling it down to be simplistic, it can be simplistic. It doesn't have to be complicated. And just let everything else go. Don't worry about, either what are people going to think of me or the big thing for me when I really made a lot of changes with my food that impacted my health was I realized how much better I felt, and that was far more important to me than what anyone thought about what I was doing. And so it was just a no-brainer. If people challenged me and were like, "Why not eating gluten?" Because I went gluten, dairy free, and off refined sugar for the first time when I was 20, and I've mostly, for the most part, I lived there. About 95% of the time, I would say, and I just feel better. So that's why I do it. And so when people would challenge me, I'd be like, "Well, I feel good. So I'm gonna keep doing that." And it wasn't a big deal. And I would always, one of my things back then, especially with social events, was I would just bring something that I knew I could eat. And so if there was nothing else there that, within my palette of things that I was eating, at least I had the one thing. And I would make enough to share with everybody. It wasn't like I just brought my own one little portion. I would make enough and, I wouldn't tell them that it was gluten free and dairy free. And they'd all be like, "Oh, that's so good. What is it?" And then I'd tell them and they'd be like, "What?" Anyways, this is before being gluten free was like a thing, right? Now there's substitutions for everything. But you gotta do what serves you and really just stand firm and strong in whatever it is that you're committed to and whatever you're trying to create, and know that it is possible to adhere to that even when you're outside of your normal routine. You don't have to I think one of the issues I hear from a lot of women is like we don't want to be the obnoxious person in the restaurant, right? Who's like, I don't want anything on the menu. So like, can you do this and this and this? And I a long time ago became totally okay with being that person. I don't make it a big deal. I'm not going to be a jerk to anybody if I'm staying with someone, I just and they don't eat like I do. I just say, "Hey, I'm going to bring a few things. Is that cool? Like, do you want me to bring some for you too?" And I do that, and no one's ever had a hard time with it. It's never been a big deal, and I think part of that is because I just stepped so firmly into, like, this is what makes me feel good and what's important to me, and that's what I'm doing, and you can do that too. So, all that to say, those are the 3 things you wanna ask yourself. What kind of experience do you wanna create? What are you really committed to? And, what how can you approach it without beating yourself up? Like, can you just let all the stuff go? Those are the important things, and just do the best you can and accept that every day is a new day. And just because you fall off, just because I had internet yesterday doesn't mean I'm like, ah, screw it for the rest of the week, it's all over. No, I'm back on today, having my fruit and vegetables and all the things for breakfast and my water and my supplements, and we're just gonna keep on trucking. So hopefully this helps serve you, and I will see you all next week.